This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the podcast today, George Wright VI. Welcome to the podcast, George.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we were just talking about this. You got to explain the sixth.
Yeah, so Robert Wright was one of the upper guys that fought alongside George Washington. And he crossed the Delaware into the Valley Forge with George Washington. In fact, there's that fairly well-known painting, especially here in Utah, of George Washington down on bended knee. He's got his knuckles like this. You know, traditionally a Quaker would have prayed like this, but they have it like this. And if you look close, you can see the white in the knuckles. He's praying. And I always think after he stood up, he went and talked to my great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Right. And
that was Robert Wright. And so when the war finished, he had his first son, and the firstborn son was George Washington Wright. Okay. And it is gone. So that was George 1.
Yeah.
And it's gone George Wright, George Wright, George Wright, all the way down to me, and now my son, who's the 7th George in a row.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. So now, caveat, the middle name has changed.
Okay.
Oh. But the first name has always stayed the same.
So what's your middle name?
Michael.
Okay. Is that family name?
No, named after the Archangel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang, dude, that's a powerful name.
Well, I mean, but guys our age, we're like, George Michael?
Yeah, right.
Right? It's so funny. I can age anybody when they're like, we need your name. And I'm like, George Michael Wright. And they're like, depending on what age they are, it's instantly like, really, George Michael? Or it goes right over their head and they're like, oh, okay, just a name.
Yeah, no big deal.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's way cool, dude.
My son's George Kavika Wright, and he's got a Hawaiian name.
Okay, you got to explain that then.
My old man grew up in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so basically lived his whole life there, from the age of 2, I think, on, and went to Punahou High School, same high school as Obama.
Oh, right.
Has like a 100% graduate to college rate, like everyone that graduates.
Oh, wow.
And the one that didn't, they were furious with her. It was Michelle Wu, the golfer.
Oh, yeah.
She went pro. She didn't go to college, ruined their numbers. They're furious. It's funny. So,
I bet they are. So, yeah. It's like, just go get in it and then quit, right? Like, we need you in.
It's like, hey, we have 100% go to college. And she's like, I'm going pro. I'm going pro.
Which is the right decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. Maybe she'll go to college in her 40s or 50s and then they can.
I have that poll. I didn't go to college. Did you go to college?
I did.
Did the whole thing?
I did 4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So my story is I basically did pre-law, and then I got into law school and then did not go to law school. Instead, I started running my parents' business.
Okay.
So.
And that was, remind me the name of it.
ADP Lemco.
ADP, that's right. Yeah. ADP Lemco. I'd been out to the shop before.
Have you?
I've been out there, I don't know. I mean, forever ago.
I was gonna say, you're out to the old shop in West Jordan, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So we moved our manufacturing to the Midwest.
Oh, okay.
So we are. I have like a mixed use building in Draper now.
Oh, okay.
You know where Edge Homes is, right off the freeway?
No, I don't think so.
You know where McDonald's is, Bangor and I-15?
Well, I've been there a few times. No, but yeah, around that area.
Right there. There's some mixed use buildings right there.
Okay.
Actually, Don Watkins owns them. Marcus's dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I did 1 year of college, but I do. You kind of joke like, maybe Michelle Wu will go back to college. I'm like, I literally just told my wife last night we were starting Shakespeare in Love. I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but we were waiting for our son to get home, and it was snowing last night a bit. So I'm like, all right, we'll fall asleep watching Shakespeare in Love while we're waiting for Kavika to get home. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I can audit a class. I'd love to audit a class about Shakespeare and learn more. Just. For I don't need academic accolades. I don't need straight A's, but it would be interesting to hear that perspective because these professors, a lot of them, if you get into their niche and it's a niche you like, you're going to learn stuff. And so I have that poll, but I just did the 1 year right before I left to Argentina on my mission, World Cup.
Yeah.
Argentina.
Oh, World Cup! Congratulations!
So thrilled about it.
I mean, they gave Messi 5 penalties throughout the thing, but whatever.
When you're the best,
you get fire up my soccer fans. Yeah,
it was funny. I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah,
I was born in Chicago. I should say I didn't grow up there, but I grew up in. I was born in Chicago, so everyone here thinks that Jordan should have gotten the penalty called on him.
Oh, right.
And I couldn't agree less.
How dare you come here with that Bulls attitude?
Did you watch The Last Dance?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think Bob Costa says it was tantamount to a maitre d' helping someone to their chair. And I was like, yeah, thank you, Bob. Appreciate that acknowledgement.
I'm going to go on a non-controversial limb here and say that was a little biased of a documentary.
Probably.
I love some of the parts of it, right? With like Isaiah Thomas, just Jordan shitting all over him, dude. Just he freaking hates that guy. Yeah. He's recently come out and had some quotes about it, right? He's like, I didn't know I was hated so much, or didn't realize I was such a terrible team, or something like that, like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, you were in the bad boy Pistons. I mean,
yeah, it's funny to go back and and I've never actually been super into sports. Yeah, I kind of like touch in a little bit, but I've never been. I couldn't tell you the name of two guys at the Jazz right now. I couldn't. But every once in a while, for me, what pulls me into it is excellence. Yeah. That is what, that's why I'll watch the Super Bowl. I don't want to just show me the two best teams, best of the best this year. I want to watch them, and hopefully that's the case. And I think sometimes it's like, well, no, the real Super Bowl game was the one before it or whatever. But, at the end of the day, that's what pulls me in is to see, excellence. I'll watch Steph Curry all day long, just do what nobody else can do. It's like, what was the video game? NBA 2K? Oh, 2K, yeah. Or remember? Jam. Yeah, and when the ball would turn on fire?
Yeah, that's like NBA Jams, I think.
Yeah. And if that ball turned on fire, you knew you could just throw it up from anywhere on the court and it was going to get in. That's Steph Curry. I mean, I love watching that. Like, who doesn't want to see that?
He changed the game for sure, Steph Curry.
So I love watching excellence, and I love, so I watched The Last Dance, born in 83, 5 years in Chicago. And so, we had the Bears were pretty darn good that year, those years coming into 85, 86, 87, 89. Yeah. My uncle Glenn Kozlowski was the wide receiver for them. And I say Glenn, Uncle Glenn, but that's because him and my dad were so close. But watching Jordan in that Last Dance get so emotional, and in that one line where he says, listen, if you don't want to play as hard as me, don't play. Yeah. But I want to play. I never asked anybody to do anything I wasn't doing myself. I'm like, it's true.
No, there's parts of, in my perspective, right? I'd have loved to be on a team with Michael Jordan, because you got a dude that's going to bullwhip you and make you better, right? Like, I'm a kind of personality that needs that. I need someone who I can like aspire to be like on my team, right? I feel the same way about like Steve Jobs. Like Steve Jobs was an absolute nightmare of an employer, right? Fired people at the drop of a hat, did it for theatrics, did it for the drama, then he'd cry and bring him back. And like, it was all crazy. There's a story. Did you read his autobiography, Steve Jobs? Oh, it's really good, with Walter Isaacson. Basically, Joe Ivy's the main designer, right, for the iPhone. They spent like 2.5 years or some ridiculous amount of time, like 14 hours a day trying to make this iPhone, right? So they bring it to him in the boardroom, right? He's sitting there all pompous as shit, right? And you had an iPhone, right? You unpackage a thing, it's all beautiful, the packaging is beautiful, everything's lined up, blah, 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 blah. They like do the whole thing for him, they hand it to him, and he just grabs it, throws it up, and says, this is shit. And Joe Ivy was so pissed that he walked into his office and just started taking shit and put it into a box, right? Like he was just like, I'm done. I am mother freaking done. And, and Steve, like, I don't know how it all goes down, but he gets back with Joe. Like, what are you talking about, man? You knew I was going to just say this is shit. I was going to say no matter what.
No matter what you came with.
He's like, and they have like some heart to heart, right? Where he's like, okay, I'm above this now. Like, you can treat everyone else like that, but I want respect, kind of thing. I guarantee Steve didn't agree to that, but I'm sure he gave him a wink and probably treated him that way. He's insane.
Had to respect, John Ivy's talent, though. I watched both the documentaries. I like the one with, not documentaries, the movies.
Like the mock, what do you call
biopics, I guess you call them. Yeah. There was the one with Ashton Kutcher, which was, so-so for me, but the one where I think they did it like the 3 launches. Okay. It's like 3 or 4 launches. It's with, who's the actor? Well, you got Joe Rogan's in it. Seth Rogen.
Oh, I was like, Joe Rogan's in it?
Joe Rogan is not in it. Seth Rogen was in it. And what's the guy's name? I can't remember his name, but he plays Magneto in in the.
Oh, is he the British guy?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's phenomenal. He was in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting his name. I'm a huge movie guy, so I'm like, I remember this guy, but you know, he can do it all. He's British, he can do American, he speaks fluent German, and does so in Inglourious Bastards, killer scene in the bar. But anyway, Seth Rogen's character is talking to him. And Seth plays Woz. Steve Wozniak.
Yeah, Steve Wozniak.
And he goes, I'm an engineer. I create stuff. Johnny designs it and da-da-da-da, you know? And he's like, what do you do? Have you not seen this scene?
No, I haven't seen them.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
If you've read the thing, I would, of the two, go watch this one.
Okay.
And he goes, what do you do, Steve? I know what I do. What do you do? And he's like, listen, every orchestra needs its instrument players. Some play this, some play that. The oboe needs a little more this. The piano a little less that. I am the conductor. And it's pretty spot on, I'm sure, to how he really was.
Oh,
right?
I'm sure it was.
But he pushed people, right? And,
the craziest thing about him, he died of cancer, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Curable pancreatic cancer. He literally thought he could just eat apples and
fruitarian his way out of it.
Make it go away.
Yeah.
And it's weird. There's some chaos. There's a lot of chaos to that. There's a lot of beauty to that at the same time. It's like, it like took him, like his craziness built this amazing company that will last for the foreseeable future, but also took him at like 55 years old, which is insane. That's a dude that probably could have lived to 90.
Yeah. Yeah. That is wild. And have the one kind of pancreatic cancer you could survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, one of the things I teach my kids pretty often, I say this pretty often as well, which is, the ability to be self-aware is a superpower.
Yeah.
And to be able to absolutely identify and touch, almost as if it were something, a part of you, a flaw. Reach out and touch the flaw and don't take offense to it. In fact, be grateful you can identify it. And it seems like he could have used some of that, right?
Yeah.
And probably would have saved his life if he could have just said, maybe I should just listen to a doctor or two, or, maybe apples and grapes aren't going to save my life from this, one thing. My grandmother died of pancreatic cancer. And I mean, generally it's like, you have pancreatic cancer. It's like, no. But if you got the one kind where it's like, oh, well, this thing, we can solve this, no problem. Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What was his final word? Wow, wasn't it?
Was it?
I want to say that was his final word was wow. I didn't read the book, but I felt like I've read that or heard that.
Yeah. I'll look it up after this podcast.
All right. Share it in the notes.
Because it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I'll put a link to it. So what were you guys doing in Chicago? What was your dad doing for work out there?
So yeah, my old man, he passed away when I was 24. So it's been, 14 some odd years, almost in May. I think it'll be 15 years since he passed away. But he worked for a company called, Credit Management Services, which was the collection arm of Trans World Systems. That was the name of the company. Pretty big collection agency at the time. Yeah. They probably still might be, although I think there's been some acquisitions and stuff like that. So he was ahead of there. He was, a bill collector, flat out. And then they started in California, where all my older sister was born, and then we went to Chicago. He was made a manager, and he was there for a short 5 years, relative to time, short 5 years, 6 years. I was born there, and then we went back to California, and he was made vice president of the company, and went back to Roanoke Park, which is just Bay Area. Yeah. And so that's where
he was a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah, always. Yeah.
Oh, you like your whole life?
As long as I knew my dad, 6-pack, massive, lean, preeminently disciplined. Yeah. The Justin D's, no wonder him and Justin connected so well. Yeah. He just always controlled everything that he ate. I only saw him eat bad maybe in the 24 years that I knew him. I probably saw him eat bad food maybe 30 or 40 times. Yeah. Now you can maybe say, like, from the age of 10, to 24, right? Because I don't remember what happened before 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever. But in those times, 30, that's like 30 pizzas or burgers or something, that I probably eat daily, right?
Weekly?
Yeah, like all the time.
Weekly?
Yeah. And that was it. He was just so into that. So he's so disciplined, and that translated well for him for work.
Yeah.
He had a lot of discipline. He shaped a lot of guys, and it was cool. It is, so yeah, he was there and then went and did the company as vice president in California. And then, but I moved out of my home when I was 16. And so they lived there, and I became, I transferred legal guardianship away from them so that I could move to Utah.
Oh,
and that's when I went to Lone Peak.
Why is that?
That's in the religious vein for me. That was, I'm 16, grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. It's the only time I'll say the full name in this entire podcast. What kind of Mormon are you? I'm the kind of Mormon that says the whole name like I'm supposed to, just the once.
Yeah.
Grew up in the church, had a phenomenal relationship with my parents. Always, like, super trusted them. They trusted me. And when I say I trusted them, it's like, here's your lines and rules, can you play within them? Yeah. And if I don't, I will tell you.
Yeah.
And it was so phenomenal. And I feel like my older sister didn't operate that way, and I think the adage is, I want to say Seneca, the old Stoic, would say, highly intelligent people will learn from everything all the time. Meaning, you're always just looking for the answer. You're self-aware, knowing you don't have it all. Smart people will learn not from their own experience only, but also from other people's experience. And dumb people have all the answers.
Yeah.
And I just learned from watching my sister. I'm like, man, I don't want to, she's always at odds with my parents and all that stuff. So I was happy to kind of color inside of the lines, but my parents always left room for humanity. I tried to, but I never stayed in the lines all the time, but I had that trust with them where I get to go and talk to them. And so I just had a great relationship with them, and I always did enjoy going to church. But I felt like my parents, they enabled me to make my own choice and decisions about it. And in fact, my dad, who grew up Catholic, he became a member of the church later on in life, and when he was about 19, 20. Okay. And he would it was almost his biggest fear that I would be a member of the church because he is. And so, it almost like, I felt like I was getting talked out of it. You don't want to, this is pretty hard, there's this and there's that, And he would always say, he's like, listen, I would not be a member of this church. I wish I didn't know that I needed to be a member of this church. That's what he would say. I wish I didn't know that I needed to be a part of this church. Yeah. But I know this is where I should be, And I always respected that. So at 16, that's when I grabbed the Book of Mormon. I read it in 5 days. And then I'm like, man, I'm in it. And I went to my mom and dad the next morning after the 5th day and I just turned 16. I went to them and said, hey, I love you guys so much. I want you to know that I want to be a member of this church because I want to be a member of this church. You guys can do whatever you want from this point. But I also feel like I should move to Utah. I want to spend time, where instead of a school of 1,800 where there's 9 members of the same church and only 3 or 4 of them were, kind of following it, trying to. I'd like to go to Utah, and they're like, we will help you do that. So, I got my brand new car when I was turned 16, not brand new to me. Yeah. I don't know if you remember it, the Mercedes. It was a red. Oh, I kind of do remember you being in a Mercedes. Yeah. Yeah. Red 2-door. It was a 1980. Was it a drop top? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Convertible 2-door, little back seat in the back. And then, so it was kind of a cool, fun car. And so I drove out here to Utah and then, did my junior year at Lone Peak and my senior year at Lone Peak. So who'd you stay with? So for the first year, I lived in my aunt and uncle's basement. Okay. And then that didn't work great. And then I ended up moving in with Chris Williams. I lived in Hidden Oaks. Oh, you did? Mm-hmm. My senior year, I was in Hidden Oaks.
Oh, okay. So I was on my mission when you lived there then.
Yeah, that would have been.
Because you weren't coming to, you didn't go to church when I was going to church.
No, because you left, right? Yeah, because it wasn't until senior year.
Yeah, it would have been right around.
Gone.
Okay, yeah. Because I left in November of 2000.
Yeah, and it would have been right around that time period I was moving in.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to like a singles ward.
Oh, okay.
So if you were going to the family ward,
Yep.
you might have been there for a minute before I technically left. But
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was there and graduated out of the
So how'd you like living with the Williams?
I loved it.
Did you?
Oh yeah. Tim and Eileen, living with Chris and Mark. Oh yeah. I love them. I love that whole family.
That's fun. You still see Chris?
I haven't seen him in forever.
Really? Neither have I.
I haven't seen him in forever.
He's one of the guys I used to talk to a lot that I've really lost track of the last probably 10 years, really. Maybe not that long, maybe like 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably been, I would say, somewhere in that time frame for me as well.
Yeah. Do you know where he lives?
Gone, huh? Last I heard is he actually works, I want to say he works for my old business partner that I did the mining stuff with.
Oh, okay.
The gold mining stuff. And that's last I heard, Scott reached out and said, oh, we catch up. Scott and I talk pretty often actually, and that's great. I think I love when old business partners, it says something about, I think, both sides.
Yeah.
And I'm still great friends. I'm great friends with all the girls I used to date. I mean, like there's no bad blood. I'm not friends, like you said, who's got time, right? But there's no bad blood. And same thing with business partners. All my old business partners that I've done stuff with, still reach out for advice, reach out for help, reach out for friendship,
Yeah.
And Scott told me, he's like, oh yeah, I'm working with, Chris Williams is doing some stuff for me. I was like, really? I'm like, where is he? And I don't know. I think he said he was living in the Philippines, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. That was the last I heard.
Did he do his mission there?
He was in the Taichung, Taiwan mission.
Oh, okay.
So not the Philippines.
Not the Philippines.
No.
That's wild.
Yeah.
He's a dude I got to get a hold of somehow.
Go track him down.
I'll track him down. I'll let you know if I get a hold
call
of
me.
All right, so segue.
Yeah.
You became an instant celebrity in your late 20s, was it?
Man, I would have been, 25, 26.
Oh, it was mid-20s.
26, 27, actually, yeah.
Gosh, has it been that long?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that. You run a TV show on what channel?
It was Discovery Network, Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And, it was such a small moment in time, but, that was, just right after 2008, 2009, 2010, the financial crisis hit Marie and I really hard. And it was just hard. There was
you were in real estate before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was a guy that was engaged to my cousin, and he started, he had a fund, and turned out, everyone kind of threw some money in, and he ended up taking the family for, a couple $1 million. Took, $500,000. I mean, I worked hard to get, and just $500,000 of cash gone, plus the real estate hitting. And it didn't really hit me in 08, 09, but around 2010 is when I was like, man, I got very little money left. And I'm not sure, what to do. And that guy ended up going to jail, by the way. So he was prosecuted. He stole money from so many people.
Yeah.
He was prosecuted, sent to jail, and served his time. And now I get little checks for like $49 or $59 or something like every month they garnish from the Treasury Department.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're a victim of this guy. And, but anyway, Scott Lomu and I, we met a little bit. He ended up saying, hey, my father-in-law's doing some stuff where he's buying gold in West Africa. And I, as I'm looking into like inflation and the markets crashing, I'm like, gold had just been the kind of this thing at 25, 26, that I'm like, oh, it might be good to get involved in gold or have gold or whatever.
Yeah.
Anti-inflationary, et cetera. And gold was going up. I mean, I think, it was around $2,000 an ounce. It's not even that now. I think at its peak, it hit maybe $2,100 an ounce or something like that. But he's telling me about it. And he said, would you want to go to Africa? I'm like, yeah. So I took what little money I had left, kind of like capital and said, all right, let's do it. So it was me, Scott, and then a childhood friend of Scott's named Wally. And the three of us kind of came over this endeavor. And so the first group was Wally and I went. So Scott could be kind of our lifeline stateside with phones. And then we can kind of coordinate into, all right, we're going to go try and buy some gold in Africa. that morphed quickly into, well, the best way to get gold is probably to mine it. I said best way, not easiest.
Yeah.
Or not that it is easy to do, and it wasn't. And we started mining for about 2 years, and we were just trying to make anything work, super undercapitalized, intellectually and financially undercapitalized. And we were doing that. And then Scott saw Gold Rush on TV, and the first season it aired. Scott's watching it, and he's like, our life's way more interesting than this, what we have to deal with in Ghana.
Yeah.
And so he wrote an email to the production company, and that email turned into a meetup here. They flew here. And I think right in that time was the hardest transition, was the hardest thing. And I know Scott struggles with it still to this day. And when I think about it, it's really hard. I didn't know Wally near as well as Scott did, but I spent 2 years with Wally going back and forth, and we would do our stints together a lot. So, I mean, we're talking 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time together. And it's not, that feeling you have with a good mission companion, but then, you're fighting, as a mission companion, you live somewhat insulated in a lot of ways. And that wasn't the case, in this capacity. We were like looking to survive, looking to fight for our families, looking to provide for our families, and looking to make sure that we were staying safe. He had my back, and he had, Wally had experience in, he'd gone out, he'd done a couple tours in Iraq, and that was kind of his expertise. So right after, Scott wrote an email, and it took 6 weeks for them to respond, about 6 to 7 weeks. And Wally had committed suicide the day before.
My gosh.
Before we get the response. Things were so dire. I mean, dark. And then...
Was he out there?
He was here.
Yeah.
And Scott was out there. And Scott calls me. I was in the parking lot, at the gym parking lot, and he calls me. And I mean, he's crying. I'm crying. And he just tells me what happened. And then as if, that call, with all of its significance, oh, by the way, the Discovery Channel reached back out. And I'm like, and we ask this all the time, why couldn't they just emailed one day before? Yeah. And that would have been, I think, that shred of hope that Wally needed. Yeah. Really hard times. And again, I knew Wally like this compared to,
so were you guys like in a 3-person partnership kind of
little trio, yeah.
Wow.
And everyone had their own little, I had a little bit more of the capital at the time. Wally had, out of country experience. Scott, kind of the guy with the plan and all that stuff. And so, but we were there for 2 years without any cameras, without any hope of, or even thought towards, let's share this with people. Right, like it was like, we're just trying to survive.
Yeah, you're trying to mine some gold.
Yeah. And we had great months and we had really hard months, and then the TV show kind of hit and that kind of changed things, financially a bit. And we ended up doing, pretty well. We still didn't find a ton of gold, and people are, I rarely get recognized anymore, like almost never, but it still happens ever so often. And I always apologize. I'm like, sorry, we didn't find any more gold. Sorry about that. But
how many ounces did you guys pull out of there in the time you were there?
I mean, we were there for like 5-6 years. Yeah. I would say between all the different operations that we were there with, I mean, I wouldn't know what the ounces would have been, but surely, a little over $1.5 million, $2 million, somewhere in there over that time period, I would say we saw.
Did you just mine it and then cash it every single time? Or did you guys
had to.
It?
Yeah, I had to.
Keep cash flow in the business, basically, right?
Yeah, and then you have fuel and fuel costs is a big one, and labor costs, but I mean, we worked hard. I mean, there was a lot of camaraderie with a lot of our staff, our local workers, we weren't above going in there and working with them, and that was something early on, well before, it's always weird when you have a camera filming you, because everyone, including yourselves, asking, would I be doing this if there weren't a camera here?
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I loved about the 2.5 years before the show, is I know what my actions were. I know what Wally's were. I know what Scott's were, and I know what we were willing to do. Yet when you would find yourself doing it with a camera, it just felt hollow. It felt disingenuous. It felt, because at least initially you start thinking like, well, nobody's going to believe that we did this stuff or are doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is made for TVs kind of
How
stuff.
scripted is this?
And our show genuinely was not like that. Our crews, when they were signing up, our filming camera crews, when they were signing up, we were just told, it's like, everyone wants to get on this show. We have a list a mile long of contractors, because they're all contractors.
Yeah.
They all want to get on this show because the word's gotten out that there's nothing more real than this show right now. Period.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah, it was.
Plus, you're in Africa. It's a little wild.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the point. I remember, the very first day of filming, we're all having like a meeting the night before, and they're sitting here, kind of talking like, okay, here's some things we might see and might this, and it'd be interesting if something like that happened. And I had to tell that showrunner at the time, Charlie Clay. I tell Charlie, I'm like, Charlie, listen, you are trying to find chaos in a world where I promise you it will find you.
Yeah. Period.
And literally from that second forward, Charlie never stopped reminding me of my admonition to him.
Yeah.
That is in fact exactly what would happen and did. And he's like, I couldn't believe it unless I saw it. And then another one of the executive producers or producers on the show is a guy named Matt Kelly, and he worked on the Discovery side out of Bethesda. And he said, Jungle Gold, it's so real, it's unreal. And and I loved that because it was true, and we felt that. And it was a hard struggle.
Yeah.
Getting that show done for everybody involved, and it was a hard time.
So from the time that you guys got the email saying they're interested to the day that they started filming, what's the time period there?
It was unprecedented how quickly we did it, and it was about, I would say, 3 to 4 months.
Wow, yeah, that's fast.
It's very fast. From the green light, not the green light. From the email, they came out and filmed us in Utah. A couple weeks later, they came and filmed us in Ghana. They cut a video together. It was a 6-minute sizzle reel. Sent it to Discovery Channel. Green light in 15 minutes. That, and then to the show again about 3.5 to 4 months between all of that.
Wow.
So the sizzle reel was created in like 6 weeks though, which is pretty quick as well.
Yeah. So no one ever asked this, did they pay you well to be like that first season?
They paid us decent, right? And I mean, we have, NDAs under our contracts and all that stuff, but they paid us a lot more consistently than we were used to getting.
Was it like a per episode type thing?
Yeah, they do episodic, but then there's all these other benefits you get that you don't think about, right? Like you get exposure. We had people that were giving us equipment. Well, now you have equipment that's at a zero cost. This is great, stuff like swag and stuff like that. I mean, I still wear my Ray-Bans. Ray-Ban gave us probably like $4,000, $5,000 worth of glasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Just so you were wearing them when you're on the show, right? Just like product placement.
Yeah. So, I mean,
did they just do that or did you?
No, you reach out. Did you
have to reach out a little bit?
Kind of nudge people and say, hey,
So who were the companies that you wanted? Like when you were thinking about it, like who did you reach out to?
Oh man. Well, we didn't even understand that you could do that until a little bit later in the game, but it was one of the people on the TV show said, oh, my girlfriend, she works with Luxottica. And Luxottica, if you own a pair of glasses, Luxottica makes it. Doesn't matter if it says Oakley on it or Ray-Ban on it or,
okay.
I mean, it's the illusion of choice because Luxottica makes it. And she's like, and he told me, he's like, oh yeah, she's kind of over the Ray-Ban side of it. And, under Luxottica, and she helps people get, I was like, well, give me your info. So I emailed her and she's like, yeah, what do you want? That was it.
Yeah, whatever you want to give me.
Yeah. So we got like, I was just like, well, I love aviators. Yeah. Like aviators, take them. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I got, probably like 6-7 pair of aviators and like 5-6 pair of Wayfarers. Yeah. I gave Scott the Wayfarers and I took the aviators and Scott's like, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, cool, thanks. But we worked with Goal Zero, their local company here. Yeah. Goal Zero gave us a ton of solar stuff and tents.
Did that help them?
I just don't know. I think I don't know if it did or didn't.
Yeah.
And I hope it did, right? You hope. You don't want to take something and feel like, but it's hard to know. And then our show, we got We got robbed at gunpoint at the end of season 1. And we got arrest warrants at the end of season 2 issued for us. And so here we are sitting in a country we've lived in for almost 5 years now, 4.5, 5 years. And, you turn on the radio, TV, and we're on there and they're saying, an arrest warrant's been issued for Scott Lomu and George Wright, 2, international,
superstars.
If that, I always tell people we were never famous.
Yeah.
We were fame-ish.
Yeah.
But I mean, at its peak when the show was airing, if I were at the mall or at Walmart, 14, 15, 16 times stopped. No doubt.
Oh, that's
like
cool.
Guaranteed. Like, and Scott and I would kind of, did you go out today? Yeah, I went out today. Yeah, I did too. How many times? 14. How many times? 18 times, got stopped and photos and stuff. But, we were only on for 2 seasons. So that recognition, so now if someone even, what I get more often is, I feel like I know you. Have we met? And I'm like, no, I have a pretty decent memory for faces. We haven't met. Do you watch the Discovery Channel? Or did you ever? And then it clicks for them. Wait a second, and they don't remember my name. They don't remember the name of the show. Yeah. So I mean, we weren't all that great. We weren't all that big, but.
You should have dated a Kardashian or something. Yeah.
show would have gone gangbusters.
Locked into eternity. So how come they didn't renew you for a third? Well,
I think just the instability. Right. I mean, we actually came home from that second season after we're talking. They put together, a war room in Maryland for Discovery Channel's headquarters. Got us a G6 jet out of the Congo that flew to Ghana, that flew us from Ghana to Algeria. Wow. We refueled in the middle of the Sahara, and then went and flew to Paris. And then we deplaned in Paris, stayed there the night, flew into London, where the production company's based out of is London. And then we instantly met back in Hollywood, met back there, and we had agreements signed to go to Sierra Leone. Because both Scott and I, we were based in Ghana, but I mean, I've been to Burkina Faso, I've been to Cote d'Ivoire, I've been to Togo, I've been to Sierra Leone. So there's a bunch of places that you kind of get exposed, and the world opens up when you kind of get out of the U.S. as well. I mean, as a result of the show, Scott and I were doing stuff in Colombia, we were doing stuff in Mexico, we were doing stuff in Guyana. So I mean, we
all gold related.
Mining, gold, generally gold related.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, there was a lot of opportunities that kind of opened up, and the world got real small, and those are just the opportunities we kind of pursued. Yeah. But I mean, there was opportunities for us out in Australia. There was opportunities in, in the United Arab Emirates. There was, kind of plays everywhere. Which was interesting. That kind of, not because of the show even, just because of by virtue of being in Africa, you just meet all these just diverse people from all over the planet. So it was interesting, but they didn't do the show just because it was, are we going to go to Sierra Leone and just run into more of the same? Because we were supposed to have, I want to say 16 episodes our first season, and we ended up with like 6. And we were supposed to end up with, I think, have like 14 episodes our second season. We ended up with like 7 or 8.
Oh, okay.
And those production costs from a production company's perspective, a lot of those are front loaded.
Yeah.
Like you make your most money, on those back episodes where it's like, well, we paid for, X amount of stuff. So these last few episodes where we're going to really make a lot of that money. And so I think it was just hard. So, I mean, there was an effort, there was a desire there, but in the end, Discovery Channel, I think, just said, it's just too complicated. Yeah. And nobody on our side faulted them for it.
Right. So did you guys leave after the show was over, or did you stay longer?
Well, so I went back to, a few months later, made some phone calls. You never took
the families out, right? Families always stayed back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although now I'd love to take Marie back.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool to show her it and show her the people. And, we still have, both of us, Scott and I both have really good friends that live there, and there was great bonds and relationships that were made. I've been back for a wedding. I've been back for a funeral, really sad experience there with a guy that worked with us. His wife passed away. And I mean, in Ghana, you dig those graves yourself. I mean, that was hard. But you build those relationships. You want to be there for these people. It just so happens they live on the other side of the planet. But, when there's a need.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you, are you still you're not doing mining anymore though, right?
No.
How long have you been out of it for?
So TV show ended. We did some consulting, mining stuff, like I said, in Central South America. Scott and I stopped working together. He kind of had an opportunity that was singular to him. And it was so great, actually, because we'd both kind of been looking. We basically had this phone call, and it was like in a relationship.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you kind of connect eyes and you realize at the same time that you both kind of lost that, love and feeling.
There you go.
Yeah. And then that's how it was for Scott over a phone call. And it was relief on both sides. And I didn't want to hold him back from what opportunity he had. And he didn't want to hold me back from what opportunity I had. And it was just kind of this beautiful parting of ways. And, with the amount of hell that him and I had endured together, we know each other so well, like profoundly well. And the trust that goes along with that, and love and care. And we get together and it's like, man, why aren't we getting together more?
Yeah.
In fact, I where did I see him? I don't know. I ran into him. We ended up at that Coins and Cars event. Have you ever been to that?
No.
Anyway, we ended up, Dan Young puts it on, and Bridger Pennington for their Ugly Unicorn Fund.
Yeah.
And I saw him there, and I was like, oh my word, it's like everything else melted away. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to meet anyone. I just wanted to spend time with this, comfort food, so to speak, right? This comfort relationship. And that's what we built together. That's ultimately what we built together over that time. We didn't build a ton of money, but man, we built something that is comfortable and valuable to us now. Yeah. And we just both kind of were able to just say, all right, that'll be this deal we were working on will be our last one, and then we'll kind of part ways. We ended up splitting a pretty decent check, and kind of he went his way and I went mine. And from there, I explored starting a solar company. Took what TV money we made, and I said, maybe I'll start a solar company. And I was looking at doing that in Arizona. There was a weird vote that happened in Arizona that kind of affected solar. And I'm like, I don't want to take the risk of starting in that kind of an environment. And was also at the time still doing some real estate stuff. So I leaned a little bit more into real estate, started doing a lot of fix and flips back in the Midwest, Indianapolis. Oh, okay. Built a company there with another guy that I'd met consulting. Scott and I were consulting on a company, and I met this guy. He was involved in that company. And him and I ended up becoming partners. He was based out of California. We're still partners today. He's based out of the Bay Area. And we kind of said, well, let's start like a company. We won't, go out and raise capital or anything. We'll just kind of take our own money. And so we went out and started doing house flips in Indianapolis, a little bit more to scale. And in a matter of 2 years or something, we ended up doing like 400 of them or something like that. And then sold that company, and then brought some of the capital back. And at the same time started investing in kind of non-real estate related companies. So invested in a medical device company, invested in a CBD company, and invested in a medical billing company.
Okay. So
we have a medical billing practice that operates here. So, that company alone, I think we have like 12 or 14 employees or something that are there. Not a single one of them know who I am, but, and that's good. Like, I feel like we tried to set up, and not everything we've done, as not everything, you're not successful at everything, and not everything's going to hit. But I think that's sort of the nature of at least entrepreneurship from my perspective is, that ability to just stick with it. And so after we sold the house flipping company out there, and we had some of these little kind of tiny satellite companies that were unrelated to real estate, started getting into development here. And over the last 3 years, we've bought and developed, I want to say somewhere around like 200, cradle to grave 200 units.
Oh, wow.
Projects in Provo and American Fork, projects in Eden, up in Eden. I don't know if you're familiar with that area.
Yeah, very.
I've got 164 development, a townhome development down in Cedar City right now, and a 30 some odd development down in Cedar City. So got involved with a lot of development and vertical construction, and just found a great team that we've kind of assembled for that. So there's been like I would say of our company, it's probably like 70% of it's been real estate related, and looking at and still going. There's still opportunity. Luckily, I was kind of multifamily all along the way. So as kind of interest rates have done what they've done, next thing you know, everyone's telling us what they want to rent our units for, and it's like, oh, well, it's good that you guys want to rent them, because I'm not selling them as fast as I used to. So this is great, and so that's kind of more or less what we've been up to. My new business partner and I, since Scott and I stopped working together, that's been kind of my story over the last like 6 years, almost 7 years, maybe somewhere in there, 6 years, 7 years. And yeah, it's been great. Marie and I just moved into our brand new home. We bought a 4-acre lot and built kind of a dream home for us. And
oh, cool. Where's that at?
Still in Eagle Mountain.
Is it? Nice.
We've been in Eagle Mountain forever, 17, 18 years, the whole time.
My little brother Kevin moved out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What part, do you know?
Yeah. So I used to call it the roundabout, the big roundabout that's out there.
Oh, yeah.
Like the original roundabout.
Yeah.
So he's a little north of that, probably, I don't know, 2,000 yards, and then just to the west.
Okay.
Or to the east in a new neighborhood.
I went out with Kevin. It's funny, one of my childhood best friends growing up in California, his dad's just a wild guy.
Okay.
And he's got sand rails and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And Kevin and him are become really good buddies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so I went out, he calls me one time, and they were going to come out by Eagle Mountain to go, out on their razors. And he called me, he's like, hey, you want to go? Not that he would even let me drive, because these guys they're maniacs.
They're crazy.
But I've been out with your dad too.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Do you know Steve?
He's really crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Scott. Do you know Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Steve's son, Kyle, and I, we've been best friends since we were like 12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, so that's funny. So I spent some time with Kevin and your dad, and we all went out rallying.
See, Kevin loves it out there because he just gets into the side-by-side and just, he's, 1,000 yards and he's in the dirt.
Yep.
He loves it.
Yeah. And I live basically like, where Wasatch Wing and Clay is?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
In the north end?
It's as north as you can get because our neighborhood's tucked up to Camp Williams.
Okay.
And as west as you can get before all development stops, and then you drive through nothing until you get to Cedar Fort.
Right.
That's where we are.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's awesome. We just moved in like 3 months ago, and it's been awesome.
Who was your builder?
Same guy that builds all of my projects. His name's
gotcha.
Mitch McCushin.
Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, he's great. So that's sort of it. That's really.
Did you get beat down on building materials, or did you guys do okay on that?
We did all right. Yeah, we did all right. And I ended up throwing like a big event at my house. Marketed it for several months leading up, and we ended up having about over 2 days. We had a little over 1,400 people walk through the home.
Wow!
And so there was usually a little bit of the marketing platform.
Yeah,
I call it Parade of Home, and really wanted to show off our interior designer and our builder.
Yeah,
and they did such phenomenal work. And my builder, like I said, we've built hundreds and hundreds of doors together now, and he's just awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was.
So, is your strategy right now with your homes that you're building, like your townhomes and stuff, is to just rent them?
Yeah, we're definitely pivoting into a build to rent model for sure.
Yeah,
build to rent, and I'm literally in the throes of acquiring a 204 condo development in Provo.
Oh, okay.
Like a stone's throw from a development I had. I've been working on and just wrapping up now. But yeah, there's just, there's always an opportunity. You just need to kind of look for it,
So what's your gut feeling on the real estate market here in the next 24 months?
I think, 24 months, I think there's going to be a lot of changes in 24 months, just like we've seen in the last 9.
Yeah.
9 months ago, I could sell a townhome 5 times. The same thing, I could sell it 5 times. I'd get 5 offers on it. We're going way above my asking. That was just 9 months ago. So, the rapidity in which things can change is, lightning.
Are we still close? I mean, I know we're not quite there. Is it easy to find buyers still, or are they?
So luckily, again, I have one development in Spanish Fork that is higher end stuff, like 700,000, 750,000 is probably our low end for the home, and we've got homes in there like $1 million, and that's like slowed down, quite a bit. But our townhomes are still going. I'm not getting 5 offers, but I list it for a little bit less than what I was listing it. Maybe like, call it 5 to 7% less than what we had it listed for 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And I get it sold, but I don't get it sold 3, 4, 5 times over.
Right.
So, that's sort of where we're at. I don't know where I have a guess, but I mean, that's all it's good for is a guess as to where the real estate market will go. But I see interest rates still going to go up. I still think that we're going to go up a little bit more. And so that when it does fall in maybe a year, at the 12-month to 24-month mark, as they fall down, we're going to be grateful for where it lands. Yeah. In other words, I don't think we're ever going to see what we've seen. This 3.5%, 4%, 3.2%, 2.8%, that's gone. And, but I think that we'll be grateful for where it lands at the 12 to 24 month mark. And I think towards the end of 2023, I think people will be, those that are building, that have the ability to build, I think they'll be grateful that they're building. Because you have to remember, we're catching up now, still to this day, there's 40 some odd thousand people just in the Wasatch Front. So I'm talking like Ogden to Santaquin.
Yeah.
The last thing I read was from the Kim Gardner Institute out of the U. They're like 48,000 people they're saying that need a home. That demand didn't disappear just because interest rates went up.
Yeah. I think Utah's special in that for sure.
And we were special during COVID.
Yeah.
If you look at the unemployment and all that stuff, there is something different about how we operate. I think some of it is because of the religious culture that prevails. How long have you and I been hearing of wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, famine, da, da, da. So when it happens, we're like, yeah, we know.
Right.
And even if for those that, those people that, aren't members of the church anymore, it's still, there's something still in your bones where you've always had that mentality, be prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
Always, food storage, we're all this stuff.
Oh, so, no, when COVID hit, man, I was, I never stopped, and none of my employees did, right? We didn't do the whole shut it all down kind of thing. But I did definitely look at my home, and I was like, I feel like I'm light on food storage. And dude, it was like, I think I dropped like 15 grand on it like the next day. I was like, 5 years should be enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my whole thing, I think sometimes it gets twisted in people's minds where they're like, there won't be any food. And I'm like, no, I'm not buying this food because there's going to be no food. I'm buying this food because that food's going to be 15x of what this costs now. Mm-hmm. So when that ridiculousness happens, I'll just use my food storage and, plow through it. And then as it comes back down the backside, I'll re-engage the economy.
Yeah.
That's what I really think is going to happen to people.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. I think, but when bad things happen, would you not agree that you have something in you that's unsurprised by it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't think everyone has that.
No,
I don't think everyone has that.
No, there's a lot of people that are just like,
and I'm not saying it's exclusive to people that have grown up within the Mormon religion, right? I'm not saying it.
No, I think it's a wealth culture. You have these people that like go buy steak at, the grocery store and don't realize that steak came from a farm.
All right.
You know what I mean? And they really don't.
Yeah.
Well, that's brutal what they do to cows. And it's like,
yeah.
You followed all the way through, my man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It started somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's funny, we bought our first cow like 3 years ago, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. And I got 2 cows right now that are just grazing on some land I own up in Hooper.
Yeah.
And we haven't even eaten half of the first one, but why not? It's kind of like, for that same reason, I think, prices can and will. And I believe ultimately that there's this mentality here though in Utah where we've been taught for so long that there's going to be famines and pandemics and disease and pestilence, all these words, right? These buzzwords that have a religious undertone. And so when they happen, when the pandemic happened, it's like, oh, it's happening now. Okay. Not that it's happening, just that it's happening now. Whereas I think a lot of the country was like, couldn't understand that it was happening.
Yeah.
I've known my whole life, that these things are possibilities and to be ready as best I can at all times for them.
Yeah.
That's just the reality, cause I read the Bible and I read the Book of Mormon and my parents and all these people, it's just, that's it. Is it alarmist? Maybe. But that COVID time, I mean, we were one of the most thriving, if not the most thriving state in the union, flat out.
Yeah, I think we were.
And now, coming back to current market conditions, I'll diverge a bit from, the emergency preparedness side of it and just simply say that demand of 48,000, whatever the Chem Gardner's got at now, because I get invited, to these big meetings, central bank, they invite, guys to these meetings and they sit down like, here's the outlook. This demand did not go away. They're now just trying to figure out, well, how can I afford a house where, my interest rate was X, meaning my monthly payment, because generally people have to buy based on, generally people have to buy a home based on their monthly payment. And now they're saying, well, my monthly payments, was going to be $2,500. Now it's $5,000 for the same house. Okay. Well, the demand didn't go away, meaning that person, if they could, or they're still trying to find a way they need to live in a home, but then now they can't and all that stuff. I think hopefully what'll happen is interest rates will still creep up a bit. And then when they settle back down, they'll never be as low as they were, but everyone will be grateful for what they land at.
Yeah.
And meaning, from 2008, 2009, 2010, we were there was so much damage and fear that was pushed into the Utah economy, especially to builders, that, it's palpable. I still feel it. I got hurt. I was devastated during that time.
Yeah.
And so many people didn't want to take that risk for years. So people weren't producing property, weren't producing homes. And that's where our demand started to build up. And you can say maybe it built up at 5,000 people a year, compounded over 8 years. Well, there's your 40,000.
Yeah.
And now we're still trying to catch up with that. So now you have this new thing where, builders are cautious again. The small guys are getting, pushed away. But a lot of them got hurt during COVID. I had lumber companies that came to us saying, we took Edge Homes. Ivory was a good case. Ivory wanted to do, I can't remember what the number was, 1,300 houses. And we said, you can do 900 because they were put on lumber allocation.
Yeah.
And then you had the small guys where it's like, you don't really do enough lumber work. We have to discontinue our relationship. We're very sorry about that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in this sweet spot where they're like, just keep doing what you're doing. I was like, excellent. I'm not so big that I'm going to get, a lumber culling, and I'm not so small that I'm getting culled myself. And so that was sort of, kind of a little pocket that I kind of found myself in through COVID, but we had loss of inventory. So I do think that personally, you'll be happy if you have the strength somewhat, you'll be happy to be building, starting in spring of 2023. Because I think come 2024, you'll want to have inventory because the demand's not gone.
Yeah.
It's just the means by where that demand can reach you has been, disturbed. And, that's a whole macroeconomic perspective that is pretty infuriating.
Yeah. The supply chain issues are very interesting because I don't think a lot of people, I know for a fact, a lot of people don't really understand what that means, right? Because supply chain, we're a global economy. We buy from all over the place. So I own a spirits company, right? We do brand ambassador stuff for different spirits. We also make our own. So we buy glass, right? Well, we take on new clients all the time that are just like, yeah, we'd love to sell more of our stuff. We literally can't bottle it. There's no glass bottles. Because the place in Mexico that makes a lot of the bottles here in America, right? They can't find laborers. And then they can't get raw materials. And it's like, it's crazy. You're just talking about a glass bottle. Some of them cost 80 cents all the way up to $4 or $5 in the fancier ones. Mm-hmm. So you got to go to China, right? Well, buying stuff from China sucks, right? Because they're always messing with your quality control. They're always thinning you out. They're always doing something, right? So they send you the first couple orders. They're great. You know, then all of a sudden
Always
it's like,
great.
this bottle looks weird, you know, and they like milled it down, milled it. And you're just like, oh, these freaking, you know, it's just this major pain in the ass. But then another thing that people don't understand is how much gas prices affect that and oil prices affect that, because you got to transport this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Patron is a very interesting case. It was so expensive for them to ship stuff across the border at one point, they started flying it in. Which, if you know the difference between air freight and you know, land, I mean, what is it? 8 times the cost generally, 7-8 times the cost.
That's wild.
And because of the demand coming out of Mexico, it was better for them just to ship it. I think they were actually losing money, but that brand level, you can't not have it in the stores. So it's just,
it was a lost leader for the time period that they needed it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you don't lose your position in the market, position on the shelf.
Yeah,
that is wild. I'd be interested to know. And again, I don't understand everything that you're doing, and I know you probably explained it a bunch, but maybe some of your expertise would have an opinion on the macroeconomics of things, right? Because I got pretty heavily involved in crypto, Bitcoin. I'm just gonna say Bitcoin actually.
Yeah.
I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. Like, I see a lot of value in Bitcoin that I'm not seeing in a lot of the other crypto tokens, right? And
for me in my portfolio, I'm pretty heavy on crypto.
Yeah. And I'm a massive fan of it. And I think, have you ever watched any of Robert Breedlove stuff? Mm-hmm. The guy's a genius, right? This guy's like almost like a crypto philosopher.
Okay.
Very, very circumspect. When he speaks, you almost want to, you know, even me mentioning his name makes me want to speak more like he does. Yeah. Because he's so controlled and, surgical with his words. It's very, very inspiring. Not because he's inspiring you, but just the way he speaks. You're like, maybe I should read some more books, and maybe I should gather my thoughts better as I execute them, right? But he talks about, anyone that believes in Bitcoin is like the crazy uncle who's like tells you how the Federal Reserve's not a federal entity, right?
Right.
But I mean, none of that's crazy anymore. This is just common knowledge, and what we have now is, this status quo that it's like, well, Mark, you're not going to be able to do anything about it, and George, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. And that's kind of true. Like, we're busy. We got other stuff that we're going to do. We're not going to go and take down the Federal Reserve or try to, Or
get Clinton along the way.
Exactly. I want you to know that I am not suicidal.
Neither am I. Would never do that.
But this idea of Bitcoin, to be able to start opting out of this system and create an economy that is peer-to-peer, where I don't need the approval. I mean, the amount, I'm sure you send tons of wires. I mean, what a headache. Yeah. Even if you're sending wires, you have your fob and then this, and then if, I sent a wire out for my project in Eden. This is hilarious. This happened just like 4 weeks ago. I sent a project, a wire out, 180 grand, something like that. And just as a reminder to my CFO, I just label it, Eden. This is the Eden project. And it got flagged because Eden apparently is like on one of the national registry, no words that you're not supposed to say.
Oh, really?
It was bizarre, man.
Well, like Garden of Eden or something?
I literally don't, I don't know. I don't know. But, it's some sort of they flagged the whole thing. And I mean, I can't tell you, since I've been introduced to Bitcoin, back in 2017, the first Bitcoin I ever bought was $2,300. Yeah. And I'm like, I get it. I get what it is. And I was in Africa when I bought it. And I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing all these people on their cell phones, even in Africa. And cell phones are ubiquitous, in spite of the fact that they might not have TVs in their houses, or they have phones, and smart ones generally, to boot. And that's why I was kind of indoctrinated by it as I read the white paper and didn't understand it, but started to. And anyway, going back to Robert Breedlove, he kind of explains how, numeracy as an example. Numeracy is like a software that we have booted in our brains, right? If I tell you 5 + 5 is 10, you're like, well, yes, he's right. You didn't need me to tell you that to know that the answer is 10. And just like speaking, right? Literacy and the ability to form letters and words and elocute a sentence, etc. This is a form of neuroscience or neural software. This is kind of how he explains it. And he says, well, money is as well. I mean, everything we do, we negotiate in some form of a dollar, right? And I've had to do it, myself in CD, and I've had to do it in euro, and I had to do it in British pound. I've had to do it in Leones, where you take a backpack to the restaurant just to pay for dinner in Sierra Leone. No joke. I've had to do it. I have a bowl in my home office where it has all the currencies of all the countries I've been able to visit and stuff. But ultimately we negotiate in dollars, we'll say, for simplicity's sake, because that's, prevalent in our lives. And he said, that's also like numeracy. It's like this neural software we have in our brains. And he's like, except unlike literacy and, where we know the rules, I before E, except after, that's kind of like you're not going to call it a glitch in the matrix code or whatever, but it's like this little thing. We know that rule in literacy. We know the I before E, except after C, or sounding like A or neighbor away. Well, in this neuroscience of dollars, there's a virus. And the virus is the Fed. Central banks, not just the Fed, right? You have the ECB and they have this ability to go in and they can edit the code that's hardwired in our brains and how we operate and print, what was it this last time? 1.7 trillion in the omnibus bill. Yeah. And it's just, it's wild. And he explains that it's like, there's a virus in our code. And basically, Bitcoin, you opt out of this, you start to, and I kind of like that. I like that idea of it, but we're still stuck in this macroeconomic climate. So going back to my question to you is, do you have any inkling as to, or conspiracy theories that may be less conspiracy theories now of where things are going to land with regard to, the world economic, because China's an interesting place to be buying stuff right now when, Ghana has been an ally of America for as long as you can shake a stick, as long as we've been alive. The amount of money, you go to Ghana, when Obama was called as president, they named a hotel. You can see it on the way from the airport as you try driving into Accra, and it's called the Obama Hotel. Americans are loved down there in large contingents there. And then they just got finished saying, like, we're going to buy all of our oil and gold now.
Oh, interesting.
That is a massive affront.
Yeah.
Ghana is one of the top 10 gold producing countries on planet Earth, flat out.
Yeah.
And so, it's not like, it's not like some country that barely producing gold making this announcement.
Yeah.
A top 10 gold producing country. And they're saying, we are now going to be buying oil in gold. Well, that's a huge shift in the petrodollar. A massive shift.
That's bad.
And the fact that you have what's happening in Russia and their alliances with China, it really does bring into question, one's ability to buy glass out of China in 2 years or 4 years or in 1 year or whatever. Right. And then you have the U.S. Secretary coming out just 2 days ago saying, well, we're here to help Ukraine. And if we were in Afghanistan, we certainly couldn't be helping Ukraine, our allies, the way we are, because there's no possible way, almost to make it emphatic, no possible way we can help two allies at the same time, like Taiwan, and it's like, bro, anyway, it's just all very interesting to me. And I always feel like we're on some sort of an edge of something, but nothing really breaks.
Yeah.
But I can't help but think that we're still on the edge of something, and how that's gonna, I don't know what thoughts you have on it. I'd love to hear.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm trying to condense them down. I'm a big stock purchaser, right? So I'm making equities personally. Just when I got home from my mission at 21, I started buying stock, right? Because it was a couple $100 at a time back then, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to look at a global market. And I think one thing, so people are listening to this, they need to understand that almost all commodities in the world are sold against the US dollar because it's the most stable currency in the world. There's massive forces out there that want to change that because being the gold standard in the world, it's very, very important to propping the currency up without going into a lot of detail. But yeah, so Russia not using the dollar, Ghana not using the dollar, all that stuff is I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, well, what does it matter? They can do whatever they want. It's like it devalues the dollar. That's why. And it just breaks down the U.S. economy over and over and over and over. But it doesn't break it down. It chips away at it. Mm-hmm. It chips away at the power of the dollar. So, for example, we import insane amounts of money. I wouldn't even attempt to quantify it from China every year. Well, if China goes, hey, we don't want your dollar because it sucks because you guys have printed too much of it and inflated it and devalued it, we just want pay us in gold or pay us in whatever, mm-hmm. A ruble. We would then, as American companies, have to start converting into whatever currency they're going to accept in order to buy from there. All that does is devalue the dollar.
Yeah, and Americans don't get that.
No, they don't get how important that is.
No, and Americans at large don't feel that and understand that, and that's sort of part of the problem. And nobody can expect us as Americans to feel that because the average person, doesn't have to experience or negotiate in those terms. Yeah. But it is still a factor that over time could potentially become a defining factor in the trajectory of America.
Well, I think it's when people say this, they sound crazy, but it really is a downfall of America. One of the presidents or one of the candidates one time has a quote that says it's the economy dummy. Right. I can't remember who that was. Might have been Reagan, whoever.
Yeah, but others have said it as well in different ways, right? You have the guys, even Jefferson, I think, was saying, if you understood, the power of the banking, your eyes would be open, sort of a thing, right?
And that's my point, right? It's like when we vote a president in, the only thing that matters is the economy. But we allow the ridiculousness of certain things. And one of them I always bring up is abortion, right? The abortion law recently got, changed on the federal level, got kicked down to the states where it should have always been. That's it. All social issues are a state issue, right? But what we've done over the last, 50 years, 100 years is take all these social state problems and slam them up into the federal government. The federal government, that's not what they're for, okay? And what the byproduct of that is when we go to vote, right? Instead of the country going, okay, which one of these guys is going to be the best one or girl, right? Which one of these people are going to be the best person to run this country and really help the economy, right? Because that's how everyone lives, survives, thrives, grows, enjoys their life is through the ability to make money. The American dream. That's why it's called the American dream. Anybody can come here and get wealthy or at least better their lives. It's easy here. But what we do is we take these people, we throw them into debates, right? We don't ask them what they're going to do about currency. We don't ask them about their relationships with China. We care about stuff like Russia, there's stuff going on in Russia. It's like Russia hates us. It doesn't matter. Our relationship with Russia does not matter unless we're going to go to war, right? I mean, we need our president to be more like some of the historical presidents to just have a relationship with their leader. We don't need to have in fact, one of the things that was great about Trump went and met with Kim Jong-un. He met with Putin.
Yeah. Close the distance, the gap.
Yeah. So we don't have this paranoia. We don't live in the James Bond era, right? Where Russia's the evil force on the planet, wants to kill everybody and we're going to go stop them because we're the good guys. It's all ridiculous,
Well, I think that's what you just said though, is because we're the good guys. Go on Netflix. Go watch an Indian film. Yeah. Some of these new Indian films, and they're creating what would be the equivalent of, Along the Western Front or Thin Red Line or movies. Yeah. And let's see how good England looks in those Indian films.
Right.
Okay. And what's so funny and why I don't know, I get upset, I think sometimes at my own country, which I love. I would instantly die for, I live for. Yeah. You know, I know
you got a flag on your shoulder right now.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. I'm wearing a fake Ralph Lauren bomber jacket, you know, a fake military jacket. Yeah, I mean, I really do. I really, really feel it in my bones, and every time I come back to this country, I feel it. But I have lived 2 years in Argentina as a missionary. I have lived, and when I say lived, I'm not talking like stamp my passport and went, but I have lived in Ghana. I've lived in Sierra Leone. I have spent massive amounts of time in Central and South America, Colombia, Mexico, Guyana. I've spent time in, Panama. I've spent time in Dubai. I've spent time in, I mean, there's just a ton of places that I've been. And unfortunately, travelers are the most, pretentious assholes you can ever meet. Yeah. We just are. Look at our passports and all stuff. But for me, I always feel grateful when I come back to America. But I try to imagine some of the stuff that people are movements here, trying to get by in other countries. And I'm just like, this would never work. I'm just trying to think, trying to see like some of the parades or the marches or the protests trying to happen in some of the countries I've lived in.
Yeah.
And two things. One, it wouldn't happen because it doesn't. And a lot of that is because people are just happy. They just want to live. They're just trying to feed their families. They do not have the amount of excess. And we have that here. And I just always try and reconcile the gratitude I have for the things that I have with the hubris that comes with it.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, you want to talk about reaching out and touching a flaw through self-awareness. I do it for myself all the time. And I have to do it, from the perspective of an American a lot too, because I have been to these other countries and I've seen what their opinions are. I've seen, I don't know if I was in Berlin a few years ago, and you walk around and all of Berlin is like a monument to how bad Nazis were, right?
Yeah.
But then you start spending time with these people, and I mean, they're made to feel terrible, about it. And, I have this is just a lot of thoughts, but there's this international, kind of sense that I've gotten as I've traveled around. And I just feel like, I believe we're the best, but I also, I understand that England doesn't think we're the best. We tell them we are, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to feel it. And it's almost like that adage where I don't need you to lose to win.
Right.
And I feel like if we had that a little bit more as a society here or culture here in America, that could be beneficial. And I think, I voted for Trump, it sounds like probably you did as well, but there's a lot of guys that I know voted for Trump, and I was like, actually, I don't share all those opinions.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. But I really wish there was this idea of where it's like, we don't need other people to lose to win.
Yeah.
We really do not need other people to losing so that we can win. It doesn't have to be this zero-sum game.
Yeah.
And I don't know, America is so amazing, but I just wish...
well, I think the general population doesn't understand what winning really means. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I just hummed on that, and I'm like, yeah, I feel that. But I'd be interested to know how my feeling is contrasted to yours. So what do you mean? What do you think it is? And
well, my thing winning, like everyone needs to look at their life and go, okay, if I vote this politician in, right, and I'm talking all of them, in 5 years, does my life get better? Individually, you are a citizen of the country. Is your life better? And I think people look at that and it's like, you got to say yes or no. Wealthy people they're going to thrive through any presidency, right? Because you're just going to pivot and adapt. Biden / Weekend at Bernie's, whatever we're calling this little experiment, right? It's like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, his tax came out, so I looked at it. It's like, okay, here's the loopholes. Let's move around. I got 3 CPAs that work for me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this kingdom is just going to adjust.
Yeah.
Right. But when you hit the middle class and people underneath there, how are their lives going to get better? And the only way it gets better is through the economy. Right. And are they getting better, educationally? real education though, not some freaking liberal arts degree that doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
You know, did they have to take on more debt? Did they take on good debt? Is it taking on consumer debt? You know, like where is their life really going? Did your net worth grow 5 years ago to where it is now? And if it did, why? Mm-hmm. And that's why I think when I watch debates, I mean, I'm kind of like throw the towel in on it, honestly. I mean, I vote. I think it's a duty to vote.
Yeah. But but these last few years have been harder. Right?
We have take the top 50 best people in this country. Not one of those people is running for president.
Yeah.
You know, Trump's Trump, whatever.
Or can.
What's that?
Or can.
Yeah, right.
That's a shout out to Elon.
Right. Well, I wish he could run, that fucking boy.
You've been watching these Twitter files?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's the best.
I mean,
well, I can go off forever on freaking Elon.
I know, man.
But I wish people could, like, just even with college in general, right? It's like you go to college. College is a perfect example, right? Everyone says go to college, get your education, okay? And everyone goes, yay. And then they go to college and they get a degree. And it's like, okay, what's your ROI, return on investment on that degree? And they just look at you with a blank stare. I don't know. You know, okay, you just got a communications degree. You had a good time doing it. It took you 6 years, right? You're now 27 years old or whatever, right? In our society, or you're 25.
Right.
Okay, what degree, what career path is that pushing you on? You know, when I hire people and I go, what was your degree? And they go communications. I honestly think, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's worthless. Yeah. You learn to communicate better? I mean, where are we at on that? Like, what was your goal? I mean, I'm bold, so I'll freaking ask him, what was your goal with that? And every time it's, I don't know. You know, well, I was going to do, you know, mechanical engineering, but that was harder than shit. So then I wanted to get out of there. Right. So I did communications. I mean, that's really the path, right? Yeah. Or, you know, general business degree. It's like, so Brett, my brother Brett, and I joke all the time, right? Because there's these people that go get a digital marketing degree in college. It's like, if you understand how that works, that program has to be built. Probably takes 2 years. Then it's going to get approved, right? From the university as an actual program. Then it has to get implemented. So by the time you sign up for that digital marketing class, the actual program was written, but I should say by the time you complete it, right? 6-7 years ago. Digital marketing 6-7 years ago. What are you doing? Pay-per-click? You know what I mean? Are you getting your MySpace page up and ready to go and optimized for your SoundCloud? I mean, it's ridiculous, right?
Right.
If you get a digital marketing degree in college, it is worthless.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that's important out of that, you can learn on YouTube in freaking 2 months.
Well, that's sort of it now. Is I feel like the winners aren't going to be those that get an go to get an education. And this is me speaking. I didn't go to college, right? Yeah. And I turned out all right. But I think there was a lot of times in my life that I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I had a degree. I'd be more, you know, potentially more hireable if I ever went into the job market, which I literally never have. I've never had a boss. I've never gone into the job market. But there's been times where I was close. You know, there's been times where I'm like, maybe I should look into that. And, you know, but now it's people need to have that initiative to train themselves and to learn and to find that education. If it is through an institution, great. Yeah. But you know, one of my favorite articles, and I read this while I was on my mission, it was from Hugh B. Nibley, and he wrote it for Times and the Seasons. You remember that old publication that the church had? Yeah. And he wrote this thing called The Year of the Amateur. And he basically breaks down how originally the philosophers and these teachers, you know, they bring these little, you know, schools together, and they, you know, were called the sophoi, and they would reach out and they would philosophize one with another, and they would say, hey, you know, build your memory palace. You know, this ability to hide information inside of a physical place that only exists in your mind. And it could be a childhood home or a Parthenon you've gone to visit or whatever, right? And you would hide information in there mentally. It's like, oh, we talked about that. Where did we talk about it? I'll go through this. Oh, it's right here. I remember this thing, right? And people, you can go on YouTube and see people do it with memorizing the order of cards. They're like, I'll show you how I do it. And they, you know, you shuffle a deck and they'll tell you exactly the order of cards after looking at it once. Yeah. And they've worked how to, you know, do these memory palaces. Well, they'd give you, hey, you know, Socrates had this beautiful, treatise on, why don't you learn it? Next day, they memorize it. They have to say it. The next day, their homework was to modify it. Can you improve it? See if you can do that. And then they started to teach and all this stuff. Well, what ended up happening is affluent people didn't or couldn't keep up. They didn't have it. They had money, but they didn't have this. So then they said, well, how do we monopolize this? So then they started creating universities. And it's like, well, now we'll give you degrees, you know, and we'll create, you know, ceremonies and rites that, you know, every time that you become educated, you know, you're going to put this fancy little stupid hat on, and you know, you're smarter now when you move your tassel to the other side, and you know, your robes will have, you know, and this is still these antiquated things which, you know, draw a lot of parallels to other things. And you know, but he just basically lambasts these institutions because they wanted to create a corner on what they couldn't actually create. Knowledge, that intense desire to learn and to grow from that learning. And I feel like, you know, there's so many things wrong with social media, but I would say if I had to choose one thing, it would be that we are being programmed to watch, and more so our children, people younger than us, maybe our younger siblings. You know, my youngest brother's 10 years younger than me, right? And, but, you know, we are being trained as a society to watch those people that do put the work in to teach us something that we're too lazy to learn. And then we think we know it. We think we know it, but we didn't do anything to earn it. And that way there's nothing worthwhile in that, you know, and so you can't value information you didn't truly earn. Scrolling and watching a condensed, you know, podcast clip of you saying something awesome doesn't mean that you earned it. You heard it, but it's fleeting. Earn that understanding, earn it. And I feel like that, you know, that's going to be, you know, that's a super valuable thing to recognize.
See, I always talk to people about mentorship, like how important mentorship is, you know, and you can get mentorship in a bunch of different ways, really. I mean, Jordan Peterson, dude, I have a lot of respect for, you know, you can watch almost every lecture series he's ever done on YouTube for free. And it's like, if you want Jordan Peterson to be your mentor, then go consume all the media he's created, you know?
But what do they do instead? They wait for it to throw up on their feed, a soundbite.
Then they quote him at a dinner party, and then someone asks 2 questions deep, and then they're just like,
what was the university he taught at?
Or even like, what's he talking about when you say that quote?
You know? Context.
What's the context in that quote that you're saying, you know?
No, it's true. And I am guilty of it. I am guilty of it. But I try, you know, there are times where I'm like, don't be. Go deeper. Find this, you know.
But if you look at your life, though, you've tried, and that's the thing, right? You gotta hear the theory and then go try it.
Yes.
I mean, how many projects have you been involved in? I mean, like we talked about, you're on a freaking TV show. Do you mind gold all over the world? I mean, who does that kind of stuff? It's like, well, you found some education, you learned something, you made an educated decision, you put some time and energy into it and some capital and went and tried it. You know, some are successful, some aren't, like we talked about earlier. I mean, most of the people I know at our age, you know, we're 2 years apart. It's like the ones that have been successful have had some failures.
Oh, of course.
You know, they didn't go grab a salary at 25 years old. You can build some wealth and live a very happy life doing that. I'm not saying that you can't.
Of course, yeah.
But if you want to really dive in and rip into some stuff, you know, in life and really try out some of these theories that you hear and, you know, be your own boss and all this stuff, if that's really what you want. A lot of people think they want that and they really don't, but
that's true.
That's a whole other side story, you know, but it's like, you got to go try some stuff. I help people build stock portfolios, you know, frequently. Right. And I used to give like this massive explanation. How does it work? How do you value a company? How do you need to come in at a stock price, right? How many shares are out? You know, what's a dividend, all this kind of stuff. And I kind of boiled it down now to what's 5 companies that you like that, you know, they're publicly traded. Apple, Nike, you know, if you're talking to dudes, right? Tesla. Yeah. Tesla's a big one now. And I go, great, take $5,000, go buy all 4 of them. We'll talk in a year. You know, and we're going to watch what happens to them up and down over the next year. And you better tell me why they went up and you better tell me why they went down. And the only way you're going to know that is by reading everything. And then it's like, hey, this was a good buy. This wasn't a good buy. Why was it a good buy? You know, what's going on. why is this down, but it was still a good buy? That's another good question, right?
Yeah.
See, Tesla was a funny one for me forever, right? Because I love Elon Musk, but I think popped and went to like 2,000 PE. So I was like, there's not a freaking company in the world that has 2,000 PE. You know, it's just bananas, right? And so, but like, and the thing with stocks, I'm looking at next year and I'm just like, dude, I'm just hoarding cash right now. I'm just hoarding cash because, you know, there's been a lot of stocks that have gone down 40, 50%. I think Amazon's down 52% on the year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, right?
Everything is.
Which is actually taking them under their enterprise value just for AWS. And it's like, this is on sale, man. You know, and next year when it dips another 10, 20%, right? It's like, okay, time to execute. Then you just start buying the crap out of it. And then in 5, 10 years from now, as things get better or whatever, you know, you'll 10x your money or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
but unless you're in the game, you can't figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it in COVID. When COVID hit, Marie and I were in Maui for her birthday, and planet was going on fire. Our kids were calling us, telling us like, they're telling us we can't go to school, maybe. Yeah. You know, we had to cut our trip short. And that's basically all I did was just just bought all this stuff, you know, bought Bitcoin, bought crypto, bought Tesla, bought Apple, bought Nike, I was just buying all this stuff because it was just, you know, all down. I understand very little about equities. I've been in stocks very, very little. Yeah. You know, but I do understand fear.
Right.
and you know, that I understand really, really well. And have, you know, my entire life. If you go back and, you know, my son's 16 and I asked him, I was like, would you move out of our house right now? In fact, would you move out of our house in August when you turned 16? No, like I did.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, and it's not that I wasn't convicted because I was, it wasn't that I didn't have passion because I did. And it wasn't because I was without fear about it. Because that was in abundance, you know, especially with my relationship with my mom and dad. Yeah. This wasn't some hard relationship. That was one of the hardest things, leaving some of my best friends who were my parents, who taught with firmness, who loved and cared and, you know, all that stuff. That was all very scary times. But was it the best thing for me? Yes. So I did it. And I've found in my life, you know, that fear. So that's why, you know, people right now are terrified. I'm scared. There's things I'm scared about right now that are just like, oh yeah, there are unknowns. There's things about it that are, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. But I also know how I've had enough now experience from 16 and even before, you know, I was doing martial arts at 8. That's scary. You know, I started full contact fighting when I was 14. We're talking full contact against grown men. I was fighting 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and they were trying to knock me out and I was trying to knock them out. That's terrifying. But I did it. Yeah. And I thrived in it, you know, and I appreciated it and I learned from it and all that stuff. So, you know, now even though there's things that I'm super scared about, I always look for the opportunities. I'm just like, what can I learn from this? Yeah. What am I supposed to do with this? Calm down, you know, the fear's not gone, but you can control it. Yeah. You know, over, you know, X amount of years of doing that, you all of a sudden, you know, you acclimatize to it and you realize that it's one of the best things ever. Yeah. You know, talk to a sales guy. I've never done sales, but I mean, the sales guys, they do their absolute best when whatever the circumstance is, you know, and they have to perform. The best sales guys will perform, you know.
No, absolutely. And that kind of leads us into the next segment, man. That's some good advice. I need your best 2 minutes of advice.
My best 2 minutes of advice.
I like what you're saying there because I think if people listen to it, right, it's like one thing that I think our lives kind of parallel is we have actually tried a whole bunch of different things that are interesting. Yeah. One thing we haven't even talked about is you were actually a yell leader in high school and in college.
Male cheerleader. I did it professionally for the Jazz too.
Oh, you did?
2 years, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. So, but I mean, you just look at your whole life and it's like, it seems randomized, but a lot of it just seems like you're saying yes to a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of my mantra. I just want to say yes to stuff. You want to go to Iceland? Let's go to Iceland. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I'm in.
Yeah. You have to be willing to try things and push out of that comfort zone. I feel like that's been one of the things that both you and I, it sounds like, again, have excelled at is no, it's okay to say yes. Yeah. You know, and it's okay to fail and try it and do it. And, you know, but I think if you and I would have quit when we failed, that is where we start differentiating. That's where things start, separating. Is, if I'd have failed, I would have, gotten a job and we'd be, very comfortable and it'd be fine, but I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have, to give to my children and to have myself. And, I just feel like I built the life I wanted. It just wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And I think you would probably agree with that yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, it's true though that, just saying yes to a lot of things, but that's it. I mean, if you want my advice that, if I gave 2 minutes of advice, it would be, a quote from Frank Herbert that has defined me. And I remember when I moved out of my parents' house, I was flying to Japan. I went and lived in Tokyo a little bit. So I moved to Alpine, was there for a few months, and then I had the chance to go on a mini exchange program to Tokyo. And I wasn't there for long, but it was, at that age, it was a little over a month or something like that. And it was a blast, but it's scary. And I just remembered, this movie my dad had me watch called Dune, which was based on Frank Herbert's Dune. And in it, there's a scene, and I say this all the time. Anyone that actually knows me that's watching this will know. But for all those that don't, it's a very powerful scene and quote in the book where he recites what's called the fear litany. And in it is, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Then he continues. So that little phrase right there, I've repeated in my brain more times than I can count.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of times. I must not fear, for fear is the mind killer. And then he says, the continuing litany is this idea where he says, I will allow the fear to pass over me and through me. And once it has, I will turn my eye back to see its path, and nothing will be there. Only I will remain. And I love that. I feel like, I guess we were just talking about this idea of my whole life. I am very comfortable with fear. I feel like if you learn to live with fear, you get to learn to live with opportunity. You get to live with growth. You get to live with risk and its accompanying rewards. That would be my advice: is do not shy away from those things that scare you. It is powerful what you can do if you learn to all of a sudden exist in fear and actually live there, not try to avoid it or pass through it or any of that. Let it become a part of you, and it'll become one of your greatest assets.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this might not be the last time we do this.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I know.
So I would love to do more.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.